All right, are you ready for this? We are diving into an election like no other.
It's really a unique situation, right?
Yeah, so we are talking 2024 U.S. presidential race.
Yeah.
And get this, the incumbent president dropped out after he already secured the
I
nomination.
know, it's crazy. Since 1968, this hasn't happened. It's a lot to unpack.
Huge implications. So November 5th, 2024, that's the date. Write it down. VP Kamala Harris. She's the Democratic nominee.
And facing off against her, former President Donald Trump, back for round two, hoping for that second non-consecutive term as the Republican nominee.
It is a rematch. High stakes. And honestly, the sources you sent over, whoa.
They're juicy.
Oh, they are good. We've got, like a fiery clash between VP Harris and a Fox News anchor. Some interesting whispers about Trump from his own party. Oh, and we get a look at how climate change is changing the way wildfire fighters do their jobs, like actually reshaping their work.
We've got it all. But first, who are these contenders? What are they bringing to the table this time around?
Okay, so Donald Trump, he's leaning hard on that Make America Great Again, pointing to what he did in his past administration. And, he's criticizing those Biden policies. His big three, his focus: economic recovery, immigration, and law enforcement. Ringing in any bells?
Oh, it's a tried and true strategy. And it
Right.
works. One poll said that 93% of Trump voters, the economy is their top issue. So he's really hitting that hard.
Makes sense. All right, so on to Kamala Harris. She's talking about building on, what the Biden administration started, but with a progressive spin, right? Social justice, reforming healthcare, climate change, these are her top priorities.
And her pick for VP, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, that's interesting. Seems like a strategic move to try and get certain demographics, solidify support in key places.
Right. Okay, round two, Trump versus Harris. What's the scorecard looking like?
Well, get ready. It's close, super close. Some polls have Harris just slightly ahead, like 1% or 2%.
Oh, wow.
One poll even put it at 49.7% for Harris and 47.1% for Trump.
Whoa, so close.
Any little thing could shift this whole thing.
Nail biter, for sure. And it gets even more interesting when you look at how voter confidence breaks down by issue.
Right, that's where it gets really fascinating. So Trump, he seems to have more trust from voters when it comes to, how to manage the economy and immigration as well. But on things like abortion rights and social justice, Harris has the edge there.
So each candidate has their strengths, pulling voters in different directions. Let's get specific. What are they actually promising to do if they win?
Okay, well, Trump is really sticking to his core message: economic growth through, tax cuts, deregulation, immigration reform with stricter border control, and then more money for law enforcement, more funding.
A continuation of what we've kind of seen before, focusing on what he considers those core American values.
Sure.
All right, what about Harris's policy plan? What does that look like?
She's talking about, expanding access to healthcare and really trying to tackle the cost of healthcare, which everyone is feeling. Then there's climate action, taking aggressive steps to fight global warming. And then, of course, a big focus on social justice initiatives, addressing things like racial inequality and police reform.
So it sounds like she's really aiming for those big issues that a lot of Americans are facing, especially younger voters and diverse communities. But let's go beyond just what they're saying and look at some moments that have really shaped this race.
Right. Okay, so imagine this. VP Harris, she's out there on the campaign trail when suddenly news breaks that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has been killed. We're talking major global implications here.
Talk about a curveball. What did Harris do? Especially, this happened right before her interview on Fox News.
Yeah, she didn't shy away from it. She said, and I'm quoting here, "This moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza." But she also made it clear that there were conditions: guaranteed security for Israel, the release of hostages, an end to the suffering in Gaza, and Palestinian rights.
Bold statement. Definitely sets the scene for that Fox News interview.
Oh yeah, and Fox News, not exactly known for being friendly territory for Democrats.
No. Okay, so picture this. VP Harris is sitting down with Bret Baier. And you could feel the tension right there. He really grilled her on immigration. And there was this back and forth. Harris insisted on, getting her point across, even interrupting him at one point.
Oh, I bet that made headlines.
Oh, yeah. And then boom, Harris says, "My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency." Mic drop moment.
Whoa. What did people think about that?
Huge impact. It was like she was signaling a potential shift, maybe even away from some of those Biden policies, probably energized her base, but also raised eyebrows for those who thought it would be more of the same.
Shaking things up. And meanwhile, what was Trump doing?
Well, Trump was busy focusing on Latino voters.
Smart move.
Yeah.
Key demographic.
He went to a noticious Univision town hall. It was near Miami. And, Florida, very important in elections. And one voter there, he straight up challenged Trump. Asked him, how are you going to win back my vote?
Ooh, putting him on the spot. What did he say? So Trump, he went back to that familiar territory, talking about wanting immigrants to come in legally through a system, he said. But then he quickly pivoted to attacking the Biden administration.
Classic Trump.
Yeah, claiming that, Biden had released dangerous criminals into the country, murderers, drug dealers, terrorists, that kind of rhetoric.
Playing on those fears about security and immigration. We've seen that playbook before. But let's talk about something that really hangs over everything. January 6th.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Voters want to know what Trump's role was or wasn't, during the Capitol riot.
Definitely. And one voter at that town hall, he just went right at it. He asked about Trump's inaction that day. What did Trump say?
He doubled down, called it, a day of love again, defended his supporters, saying they were there because they thought the election was rigged, not because of him, he said.
Interesting. Especially when you consider what Mitch McConnell has said about Trump.
Right. Remember that. It came out that McConnell, privately, had called Trump stupid, even despicable, back in 2020.
Wow. Strong words.
And yet here he is endorsing Trump for 2024.
Publicly.
So it seems like the Republican Party has, some internal struggles going on, and that could really affect, how people vote, maybe even the election results.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about another issue that's really dividing people. Abortion rights.
It's definitely a huge topic this election. A lot of states even have measures on the ballot about it.
Right, exactly. It's a battleground issue, for sure. And especially in places like, Arizona and Nevada.
What's happening there? Fill us in. So in Arizona, they've got Proposition 139, and that would put abortion rights right into the state's constitution, basically guaranteeing access up until, the fetus is viable.
Okay, I see.
Nevada has something similar, Proposition 6. They're trying to do the same thing, protect abortion rights in their constitution.
So, these propositions, could they affect the presidential race, too?
Oh, definitely. Think about voter turnout, especially among women, younger voters, people who really care about reproductive rights. This could be a deciding factor for them.
Right, because it's not just about policy, it's about people's lives.
Exactly. And one of your sources, they told Crystal Price's story. And it's heartbreaking. She's a woman from Arizona who had to make a really tough choice.
Those personal stories, they really show you the real impact.
Absolutely. So Crystal, she was 22 weeks pregnant when she had a medical emergency. It was life-threatening. And to save her own life, she had to end the pregnancy.
Oh, wow. That's so difficult.
Yeah. She said it was, and I quote, excruciatingly hard to know that I was choosing to end the life of my son. But, she also said, knowing that it was the right choice for me and for my circumstances, that my life was important, my family needed me, and I wanted to live.
It shows how these aren't just, political debates. This stuff affects people's lives, their families, so deeply.
It's so personal. And Crystal, she's now a huge advocate for Proposition 139. It shows you how sometimes going through something like that can really push people into action.
Yeah, it's a motivator. So how are Harris and Trump, approaching this really divisive issue?
Well, Harris, she's put reproductive rights front and center in her campaign.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, she's calling out Trump's record on abortion, saying it's about women's rights, about women having control over their own bodies.
And she brings up Trump's past comments, right?
Yeah.
About punishing women who have abortions.
Oh, yeah. Definitely doesn't shy away from it. And those comments, well, let's just say they caused a lot of controversy.
Trump's stance is a little harder to pin down. On the one hand, he appointed the Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe v. Wade.
Right.
But then he says he'd veto a national 15-week abortion ban.
Right.
Which seems, kind of contradictory.
Yeah, sending mixed messages for sure. He's trying to appeal to both sides, taking credit for overturning Roe, but then softening his stance on a national ban.
He did say that he would protect those against abortion. What did he mean by that?
It was pretty vague, but it was clearly meant to reassure those voters who are against abortion, especially the ones who see this issue as the deciding factor.
Right, and we can't forget about Latino voters.
Yeah.
Especially in those swing states like Arizona and Nevada.
Huge voting bloc there.
Right.
And their opinions on abortion are all over the map, reflecting the diversity of the Latino community.
So definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of group. Your sources, they highlight two different perspectives. One was Liliana Trejo Venegas. She's a canvasser for reproductive freedom for all. She said that when she shared her own story about abortion, it made the issue more real for people.
It makes it relatable.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was Etelvina Zamora Esquivel. She was raised Catholic. So initially she was against abortion.
Understandable.
But hearing people's stories, their personal struggles, it changed her mind.
Wow, that's powerful.
It really shows how these stories, how sharing these experiences can change people's minds. Okay, let's move on to another big one, climate change. Maybe the biggest one.
And here we see a huge, huge difference between the candidates, like night and day.
Their approaches are totally different. So what's Harris's plan? How is she tackling this?
She's framing climate change as an economic issue, saying it affects jobs, infrastructure, how people make a living. But she doesn't talk about it that much on the campaign trail.
Huh. Interesting.
Maybe she thinks that, the people who care about climate change are already going to vote for her.
Taking it for granted, maybe.
Could be. But she does talk about how she helped pass, the biggest investment in clean energy the government has ever made. Like ever.
Right. Focusing on those green jobs.
Mm.
Moving to a more sustainable economy.
Exactly. But she also said that we need more gas production here in the U.S., and that might upset some environmental groups.
Trying to walk that tightrope between, climate action and energy concerns.
Yeah.
What about Trump? What's he saying about climate change?
Not much. He mostly just attacks Democrats and their climate policies.
Figures.
Yeah. He dismisses global warming, makes those, let's just say, misleading claims to downplay the science. He even said that nuclear warming is the real problem. And, that's just not true at all.
Classic Trump. Bold claims, no evidence. And it's dangerous because it stops us from taking action and misinforms people.
Absolutely. Denying climate change is just irresponsible. It's putting future generations at risk. And for the record, nuclear warming isn't a thing. Sea level rise, extreme weather, that's the real threat. And we're already seeing it.
It's like they're living on different planets.
Yeah.
But let's hear from someone who's dealing with the actual effects of climate change. Sarah Jacober. She's a wildland firefighter in Oregon.
Yeah, Sarah's story, it really shows you how these decisions, these policies play out in the real world. She's on a rappel crew. They get dropped from helicopters right into active fires.
That's terrifying.
It's incredibly dangerous work. And she's seeing climate change up close. The fires, they're getting so much worse, more intense, spreading faster, burning longer.
Wow, that's scary.
It makes them so much harder to control. And it's only going to get worse as the planet warms.
A stark reminder that this isn't some, abstract idea. Climate change is happening now, and it's affecting people's lives, their livelihood.
Exactly. Her story makes it personal. Sometimes that's more powerful than any data or report.
She has a really unique perspective.
Right. And her experience, it really highlights how important it is to address climate change and to support those who are on the front lines fighting it every day.
Yeah, it really makes you think, it's not just politicians talking. It's real people dealing with the consequences.
Exactly. And that's what this election is all about. It's not just about, picking a president. It's about deciding where this country goes from here.
Right. These next 4 years, they're going to decide how America deals with, everything.
Yeah.
Climate change, healthcare, the economy, social justice, stuff that affects, all of us.
It's about the future. What kind of future do you want? For yourself, your family, your community. Think about it. That's what's at stake in this election.
So when you're looking at the candidates and what they stand for, get personal. What are your priorities? What values are important to you? What kind of America do you want to live in?
Don't just listen to the sound bites. Go deeper. Really look at the issues. Talk to people who think differently than you do. It's a big decision. Take your time with it.
Your vote is your voice. It has power. It can change things.
Use it wisely.
Oh.
All right, so before we wrap up this deep dive, let's end with a thought-provoking question.
Okay, I like it.
Imagine you could sit down with both candidates, Trump and Harris, and ask them each one question. What would it be?
That's a good one.
What would you ask Trump? What would you ask Harris?
I think those questions, they tell you a lot about, what matters to them, what they value.